through the stories of just the Holocaust and survivors speaking, there's so much there for people to learn from it, of what we went through, all the horrible things, but yet we survived. And even during those years, I was hidden. People risked their lives to save my sister and I. That was kindness. Didn't matter we were Jewish, they were Christians. We were human beings. And I think it reflects so much in survivors speaking about their stories to students as well as to adults who seem to carry most of these anti-Semitism and everything else. I think it's so important, and it makes me feel good that I've reached people and people will be better human beings. When I came to this country in 1950, I never talked who I am. I learned to speak English, and I learned it without much of an accent, and people never asked, "Where are you from?" And when I read in the newspaper that then Governor Tom Kean was creating an advisory council on Holocaust education, and I know Tom Kean, and I called the governor's office and said, "Excuse me, but I would like to be on this advisory council." And they said, "Why?" And then I told them, because it was very common, and even to this day, many survivors have never spoken about their experiences. I did not either. I had been in this country 30 years. And then I just got so involved in it, because then I realized how important it is. I couldn't be quiet anymore. How important it is to share my story and for people to realize this actually happened. So, and then we worked on the mandate. As a matter of fact, we will be celebrating 30 years this month of the mandate in New Jersey. We were one of the very first states to do this. And it has been so successful all the way, even, from kindergarten to 12th grade. But of course, in kindergarten, you don't talk about the war, but there's ways of communicating kindness and respect even at the very young children. I think it's so important for survivors to share their stories, especially with our youth. And because to kids, it's a long time ago. Probably to us, when we think back to the Civil War or something, But I think it's so important for them to listen to a survivor. And they tell me, too, it really brings it to life. To us, they said, yes, we've seen films and read the books, but to actually have someone standing there who can also answer questions. So I think, and that continues to motivate me, because I think it's so important. Well, it's interesting, because the day we were freed, April 19th, 1945, and the second place where my sister and I were hidden, at a little village called Elberg, Canadian soldiers came with their tanks into this village. And we had just suffered from the hunger winter in the Netherlands, when there was nothing to eat. And the soldiers, everyone was so excited, jumping all over the tanks, but they were throwing out their rations also to us. And then they threw out something else. And this family, the second family we stayed with, their daughter, Yo, caught something, and she wanted to give it to me, because I was standing next to her, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't want to take it. So then she unwrapped it, and she put it on her hand, and she wanted to give it, but I didn't know what this brown thing was. So she broke off a piece and shoved it in my mouth. And ever since then, I love chocolate. So that was my first taste of freedom, was Canadian chocolate. And then the other thing that's interesting right now is book banning, which is so sad also, because my book hasn't been banned yet, but by banning the books, it's just so hurtful. But of course, my mother, after the war, my parents didn't want to talk about it either. And then my mother found out that I was speaking, and she was very upset with me. And she said, you shouldn't be doing that, because it is going to happen again. Maybe not in your lifetime, but your children are all Jewish. You're putting their life at risk. But I didn't listen to my mother. And I continued, because I think it's so important. My mother's probably looking down on me going, you should stop. We're learning about a certain period of time, but so much happened before, which is so important also, of how does this come about? Can we learn from that, not to repeat it? Unfortunately, in today's world, genocides continue. But, and I'm hoping that through the teaching of the Holocaust and people sharing their stories of what they went through, that people try to understand and really reflect and say, this is not, we're going to have to change our ways in many ways. And I think too, talking especially to students, to tell our stories so that they can learn from that. I just hope that through all of our talking as survivors that we're able to change and help people understand how we really have to care for each other. And my story was classic because two families risked their lives. It didn't matter that they were Christians, we were Jewish. We were caught there, they too would be taken away and murdered. But we were human beings.